Hi, I'm Nick Shell with Family Friendly Daddy Blog. Making this video just to point out something that maybe a lot of people aren't so aware of, is that is if you are of Mexican descent in any way, when you take a DNA test result, expect it to say Central American. That may be obvious to certain people, but I just wanted to point it out. So, like, for example, my grandma, she was born in America, but her parents were Mexican. They came from Mexico, and every generation before that, they were from Central America. They were Mexican. Okay, so when my results show up, I'm showing 21.6 Central American, which is still, I think, arguably high for someone who's the grandson of a Mexican woman. But the point is, it says Central American. I think that throws people off. Another way of looking at it, some other test will say, because through MyHeritage it says Central American, but other tests will say Native American, maybe. And again, that sounds confusing to certain people, but ultimately, when you're looking at someone who is of Mexican heritage, Mexican descent, well, ultimately, we are descendants of Native Americans. But see, it's so confusing as an American to explain that to other people, because when you say that you are, I'm what, 21.6% Native American? Well, most Americans would look at me and say, no, you're not. You look more Spanish than anything. Then, well, yeah, that's because my grandma was Mexican. So they're like, oh, well, why didn't you say that? Because that's how Americans perceive things. But I think in reality, a lot of us, especially in America, we don't look at it that way. We don't decipher and think, oh, well, if you're Mexican, then you're likely a high percentage, a decent percentage of Central American, which is actually Native American. And the reason we have that complex and understanding that is because so many people at least claim that they have Native American blood, DNA, when really they're referring to headdresses with the feathers, like Cherokee, Choctaw, Creek, all of the above. That's what they think of when they think of a North American Native American, okay? And so if I say that I'm Native American, it's just going to confuse people in America. So I never say that. In fact, what I say is something that would be confusing to people in Europe, and that is, I'm a quarter Mexican. Now, if they asked me for the DNA I test, I'd break it down to explain all the DNA and how all that works. But there is definitely, I feel, a disconnect that as an American, we can't, if you're of Mexican descent, of Mexican heritage, you can't claim to be Native American and not expect to have all Americans around you confused. So I have to have two different versions of this as a YouTuber who has an audience that is global. A lot of the people that watch are Mexican, a lot that are American, and then a lot of European. I feel like when I make these videos now, I have to like interpret for myself, like I have a translator. If you're Mexican or American, then you understand that I can say quarter Mexican, and that I have to say Central American, and that means Mayan and Aztec, and it doesn't mean Native American in the way that North Americans think of it with Choctaw and Cherokee. Meanwhile, if you're in Europe, it's pretty tiring, honestly, to have to say that, because I can't just say it in my native cultural tongue. I've got to translate that for everybody, because it's confusing if you're not American. I think Mexicans understand it more so than Europeans, because we are neighbors. But that's the complexity of it. It sounds simple enough, but when you're American and you say you're Native American, people assume Cherokee, Choctaw, Creek, the feathers on, and you know, the cowboy and Indian thought, that's what they think of. That's what they think of. They don't think, oh yeah, there were Native Americans in Central and South America as well. He's saying that he's a descendant of those people. Oh, that's how it is. I need I have to serve as my own translator to explain this, depending on which side of the ocean you're on. But yes, if you're Mexican, expect the DNA test results to either say Central American, as it did in my case, or maybe Native American, even if we're not talking about Native Americans in the way that we think of in the old black and white cowboy and Indian movies. Okay, we're good? Does that make sense? Peace at last.